You're sitting at your desk in the middle of the afternoon and you're trying to finish something simple. Maybe it's an email, maybe it's a form, maybe it's just deciding which file to open next. But your brain feels slow. The words aren't coming. You reread the same sentence 3 times and still don't know what it means. You haven't skipped a meal. You're not starving. You're just slightly hungry. And somehow that's enough to make everything harder. Most people assume hunger is only a problem when it's extreme, when your stomach is actually growling, when you feel weak, when you can't ignore it anymore. But the truth is, your brain starts struggling long before that, and it's not because you're distracted by hunger. It's because your brain is running out of what it needs to function. This isn't about willpower. It's not about focus. It's about fuel. Your brain is an incredibly demanding organ. It makes up only about 2% of your body weight, but it uses roughly 20% of your body's energy at rest. That energy comes from glucose, which is basically sugar your body gets from food. Your brain doesn't store glucose the way your muscles do. It relies on a steady supply from your bloodstream. When you eat, your blood sugar rises. Your body breaks down carbohydrates, proteins, and fats into glucose and releases it into your blood. Your brain uses that glucose to power every thought, every decision, every moment of attention. It's constant, it's automatic, and it's expensive. But when you haven't eaten in a few hours, your blood sugar starts to drop. Not dramatically, not dangerously, just enough that your brain begins to notice. And when your brain notices, it starts making choices about where to spend energy. Research shows that even mild drops in blood sugar can affect cognitive performance. The parts of your brain responsible for complex thinking, self-control, and decision-making are especially vulnerable. These are the functions that require the most energy. So, when energy is limited, they're the first to slow down. You might not feel hungry yet. You might not even be thinking about food, but your brain is already working with less than it needs, and that shows up in ways you probably don't connect to hunger. You start making small mistakes. You misread instructions. You forget what you were about to say. You feel irritable for no clear reason. You have trouble choosing between 2 simple options. Tasks that normally feel automatic suddenly require effort. This isn't you being lazy. It's not a lack of discipline. It's your brain trying to function on a budget. One of the most affected areas is your prefrontal cortex. This is the part of your brain that handles planning, reasoning, and impulse control. It's what helps you stay focused on a task even when you'd rather check your phone. It's what lets you think through a problem instead of reacting immediately, and it's one of the most energy-hungry regions in your brain. When your blood sugar dips, your prefrontal cortex doesn't get the glucose it needs to work at full capacity, so it slows down. You become more impulsive. You have a harder time resisting distractions. You struggle to think through problems that would normally feel straightforward. You might notice this in a meeting. Someone asks you a question and your mind goes blank, not because you don't know the answer, but because retrieving it feels harder than it should. Or you're writing something, and you can't find the right words. You know what you want to say, but the clarity isn't there. Your brain is still working. It's just working inefficiently. And here's the uncomfortable part. You probably don't realize it's happening. Because mild hunger doesn't always feel like hunger. It feels like brain fog, like distraction, like being off your game for no reason. Your body is designed to keep you alive, not to keep you sharp. When blood sugar drops, your body prioritizes essential functions, keeping your heart beating, keeping you breathing, maintaining body temperature. Thinking clearly is not on that list. So your brain gets what's left over. This is why you can feel completely fine physically but mentally slow. Your body isn't in danger, but your brain isn't getting enough fuel to perform at the level you expect. It's also why people often feel irritable or anxious when they're slightly hungry. Those emotions aren't random. They're a result of reduced glucose in the parts of your brain that regulate mood and stress. You're not being dramatic. You're experiencing a physiological response, and it doesn't take much. Studies suggest that blood sugar doesn't need to drop to extreme levels for cognitive effects to appear. Even small fluctuations can influence memory, attention, and decision-making. The effects are subtle, but they're real. Now, this doesn't mean you need to eat constantly. Your body is capable of managing blood sugar for reasonable periods of time. It's designed to handle gaps between meals. But the modern world often asks your brain to perform complex tasks for hours without a break. And that's where the mismatch happens. You're expected to make decisions, solve problems, focus on screens, manage emotions, and respond to messages all day long. And if you skip breakfast, or it's been 5 hours since lunch, your brain is doing all of that on low fuel. This also explains why certain tasks feel impossible when you're hungry, but easy after you eat. It's not psychological, it's metabolic. Your brain literally has more resources to work with. You might have noticed that when you're slightly hungry, simple tasks feel fine, but anything that requires thinking feels overwhelming. That's because simple tasks use less glucose. Walking, listening, doing something automatic, those don't demand much from your prefrontal cortex. But writing, planning, analyzing, deciding, those do. So when your blood sugar is low, your brain can still handle the basics, but it struggles with anything complex. This is also why hunger affects some people more than others. It depends on your metabolism, your diet, your activity level, and how your body regulates blood sugar. Some people notice the mental effects quickly. Others don't feel it until they're very hungry. But the mechanism is the same. There's another layer to this that often goes unnoticed. When your brain is low on glucose, it doesn't just slow down your thinking, it also changes the quality of your thoughts. You might find yourself becoming more negative, more critical of yourself, more convinced that things won't work out. That's not a personality flaw. That's your brain operating in a defensive mode. When resources are scarce, your brain becomes more focused on threats and problems. It's an evolutionary response. In uncertain conditions, noticing danger was more important than noticing opportunity. So when you're slightly hungry and everything feels harder, and you start thinking you're not good enough, or that you'll never finish your work, part of that is your brain reacting to low fuel. It's not an accurate reflection of reality. It's a metabolic state influencing your perception. You might also notice that your patience disappears. Small annoyances that you'd normally ignore suddenly feel unbearable. Someone chewing loudly, a notification sound, a minor inconvenience. Your tolerance for frustration drops because your brain doesn't have the energy to regulate your reactions the way it normally would. This is why arguments often happen before dinner, why people snap at each other in the late afternoon, why you might send a harsh message and regret it an hour later after you've eaten. It's not that you're a bad person. It's that your brain's ability to pause and choose a measured response is compromised. And here's what makes this especially tricky. The tasks that require the most mental energy are often the ones you can't avoid. You can't tell your boss you'll think about their question after lunch. You can't pause a presentation because your blood sugar is low. You can't reschedule a difficult conversation because you haven't eaten. So you push through, and pushing through works, to a degree. Your brain can still function, but it's functioning at a cost. You're using more effort to achieve less, and that effort adds up over time. This is part of why some workdays feel so exhausting, even when you didn't do anything physically demanding. You spent hours asking your brain to perform while it was under-resourced. That's draining in a way that's hard to notice in the moment, but obvious by the end of the day. And here's what this doesn't mean. It doesn't mean you should be eating all the time. It doesn't mean every moment of difficulty is because you're hungry. And it doesn't mean food will solve every mental challenge you face.